So first, I kind of want to break down some of the broader themes that you outline in your statement. So the first of those themes is going to be this tension between national interests and national values. First, I kind of want to think about what is going to be at the forefront of the Biden administration in the topic of the slain journalist from Saudi Arabia. And arguably that is going to be national interest. So when we're thinking about national interest, it's important to consider 12 to 13% of the world's crude oil originates from Saudi Arabia, with 7% of oil passing through the Gulf of Aden, the Gulf of Aden being directly related to Saudi Arabia as the conflict with Yemen and the Houthis persists. And then additionally, it's important to think about the United States and cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia's military as well. So Saudi Arabia does allow for the United States to have forward operating bases, which are important when it comes to strike capabilities in the Middle East as well. So maintaining that cooperation, that military cooperation is going to be super important. And then finally, it's important to think about limiting Chinese and Russian sphere of influence in the region by increasing cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia as well. Even though I just kind of outlined how national interests are going to be at the forefront of the Biden administration, this doesn't mean that national values aren't also important. So maintaining amicable relationships between Saudi Arabia and the United States is also important to de-escalating conflicts in the region, such as that between Israel and Hamas, and then that in Yemen as well with the Houthis. And then also, amicable relations are also important for driving the conversation forward with human rights. So cooperation between a country means that a country will potentially be more open to having discussions about human rights violations. Whereas if we look at our adversaries and their response to human rights violations, they will be the first to dismiss our conversation of human rights violations. Next, I want to compare President Biden and President Trump's reaction to the slain journalist and kind of outline how each administration reacted differently. And kind of at the bottom of the differences is going to be accountability. So the Trump administration was quick to kind of obfuscate accountability in the situation, saying we may never know all the facts of the situation, whereas the Biden administration did come out and call this a murder, insinuating that human rights violations did take place. So with the Biden administration calling this a murder, it does leave room for the discussion of human rights rather than denying any potential offenses of human rights, which the Trump administration did. Arguably, Donald Trump took a purely realist approach on the issue, asserting that Saudi Arabia is a key ally in the region and denying any human rights, whereas the Biden administration took more of a principled realist look at the situation, kind of asserting our core values of human rights as a nation. And then finally, I do kind of want to circle back to this idea of principled realism and the assertion of the Trump administration taking a principled realist approach to this situation. Arguably, the Biden administration did take a principled realist approach to the situation by not obfuscating the accountability of the Saudi prince, the accountability that the Saudi prince had in this situation. It does kind of pave the path forward for actually having a critical look on human rights violations, whereas Donald Trump's pure denial of any culpability doesn't allow for that conversation to take place.